What I do now?
Oh, so this is where you've been, eh? This is how you repay my tenderness? Do you prefer the curves of some car to those of a real woman?
Look, Catalina, you called it off, remember? Just business.
What kind of a man are you? When I say just business, I mean that I love
What
you.
the fuck?
When I say I no interested no more, I mean that I love
Wait.
you. And
Hey,
when
that's
I
not-
say that
wait,
I miss...
But I just wanted to say how grateful me and my bosses are for what you did.
Good.
Yes. And I just wanted to check something with you.
Okay.
You are Nico Bellic, correct?
What is this?
And you used to work the coast in the Mediterranean, smuggling people into Italy.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But you messed up.
Man, that's some good shit. Man, you and Tenpenny.
And fuck Tenpenny, and fuck his Polish lapdog, and fuck the police, man. Oh, that's old shit. Look at you, you got the whole world. I ain't got no regrets, man.
Smoke, you
I
had...
made it, CJ. I'm a success. I can't be touched.
Man, I've been busy. I've been burying my moms, man.
Sounds like a fucking excuse to me.
Officer Pulaski thinks you're trying to screw with us, Carl. Now you get this straight. We own you. You're ours. We can shit on you from such a height, you'll think God himself has crapped on you. You understand?
It's very, very hard to talk about the Grand Theft Auto series without mentioning the antagonists of the games. After all, if not for their assholery, many of the games wouldn't be set in motion. While we may play as a criminal, the antagonists are criminals that have way more power than our protagonists have, and they use that power to get the protags to do their dirty work for a plethora of reasons, whether they make sense or not. I previously said that when it comes to fandoms, Saints Row and GTA are kind of in a yin and yang state. For Saints Row, it's often more talk about the protagonists than the villains, but with GTA, it's more about the villains than the protagonists. I already did a protagonist ranking, so if you want to check that out, I'll leave a link in the description. If I remember to. Much like my enemy gangs ranking for Saints Row, I made a ranking criteria which literally did nothing to help me rank these gangs, but I tried, and that's all that matters. I also really considered both primary and secondary antagonists unless the ones beyond were somewhat vital to the story. Obviously, there's going to be spoilers for these games, so if you're not cool with that, you might want to click off the video. Regardless of how any of us feel about the general story of GTA 5 and the stories of the Unholy Trio, I think we can all agree that Wei Cheng is pretty irrelevant. Even just looking through the lens of Trevor's story, Wei doesn't even hold a candle to Stretch, in my opinion. The little time he does have to be intimidating, he just shows incompetence. Like, they literally trail Michael and Trevor to North Yankton and come up with a plan to kidnap Michael in order to lure in Trevor. It would be a great plan if this was not the scene literally happening before they started to attack. Why would you come to the conclusion that these two were lovers rather than two partners who had a falling out so severe they're pointing guns at each other? Like, what's not clicking? Why did you think that would work? It's funnier because there's nothing else he attempts to do after this. They've been following and tracking Trevor before. Why did the plan change? He makes one attempt to apprehend him and then gives up. You came all this way out here. You might as well go full out, but it's whatever. Stretch is pretty minor in the grand scheme of the general plot, but for Franklin, he's a fairly big nuisance. He's kind of really only as big of a threat as Lamar's gullibility, if that makes sense. Stretch is definitely one of those types that's like, you have to respect me because I'm older than you. So annoying. At the very least, he can elicit the same type of response from people as Dimitri did, which is basically,
oh Lord, again. A fucking game.
Kind of like Big Smoke at the beginning of San Andreas, Stretch pretty much continuously tries to set up both Franklin and Lamar to get them killed in order to get in good with the Ballas. Other than that, Stretch is pretty meh, especially when considering the other antagonists. I don't think we've ever had an antagonist that simped so hard for another other than Brian Jeremy. From the very start of the game, Brian followed Billy around like a puppy and constantly challenged Johnny so he can proudly show how much of a Team Billy person he is. Billy shouting how much Johnny betrayed him was definitely going to get some response, and lo and behold, Jeremy needed to avenge his Billy Boo. Brian is as annoying and effective as a chihuahua, and it really makes you question the people that followed behind him during the short Civil War. He's basically one of those GTA antags that make you go, can we kill him, and when is that going to happen? Sometimes a villain is just a whiny piss baby. Such is the case with our dear Vincenzo. The moment Tony Cipriani steps back onto the scene, Vincenzo essentially throws a temper tantrum at each turn, constantly needing to remind Tony that he's his superior and put him down, even though Tony is currently his only capable man. To make matters worse, Vincenzo decides to take 2 opportunities to get Tony arrested and killed, but both fail spectacularly. And Vinny's killed off to focus on the totally more relevant and involved villains in the game, who everyone remembers like the back of their hand. I said it in my protagonist video that I hated Lance, and it still reigns true. He just sucks. He's like that friend that's nothing but trouble, and the only thing keeping y'all together is that you've been friends since childhood. But it's so clear that he never celebrates your victories or your successes, but always has something to say about your losses. The reality is that Vance is that toxic friend that doesn't do anything to support you, but wants you to act like they do, and will throw a fit if you don't, and make you feel like you left them behind. If you have a Lance in your life, do yourself a favor and ditch them, because they would do it to you in a heartbeat. Honestly, how anyone follows King Courtney is beyond me. He's so fickle with his allegiances that I'm surprised he doesn't kill off subordinates left and right to the point where there's a coup. He only puffs his chest out until someone stronger in power comes along. He's like Dimitri. He pretty much clings to the next big thing regardless of how much it makes him look like a lapdog in comparison to the vibe he tries to give off. Think about how he was against the Diablos in advance, only to end up being their servant gang in GTA 3. In his defense though, the gang was now being run by Catalina, and I wouldn't object to getting stepped on by her either.
Oh God!
I said it before, but most Vice City fans accept that the game is basically Scarface, the main difference being the protagonists and their endings. Sort of. Tony Montana is technically in the game as well under the name of Ricardo Diaz. Vice City Diaz is pretty much the same as Montana, especially when considering their behaviors once they reach Kingpin status. Diaz's, though, comes off more childish, in a kind of Joffrey Baratheon type of way, if you know what I mean. Like, yeah, they both become too big-headed, but Tony feels more like he's losing himself, but Diaz comes off more like an overgrown child with full access to daddy's money, you know? Still, the funniest line is how he's gonna make Tommy a made man, and Tommy was already a made man. I would definitely say while Ricardo is ruled by his inflated ego, Sonny is ruled by his insecurities, especially when it comes to dealing with Tommy. We only really see a little bit of Sonny interacting with other members of the Forelli family, and he gives off the vibe of your typical cool and collected leader that's always thinking ahead compared to his contemporaries. Through his interactions with Tommy, however, his energy is entirely different, constantly trying to throw his weight as Tommy's superior under the notion of, hey, I got you out of prison, don't forget you owe me. Sonny is basically a lot of bark, and his bites hurt as much as getting your leg bitten by a playful kitten. It doesn't make it any better that he employed Lance as an inside man to try and throw Tommy off. Granted, it did, for like 2 seconds, because Lance is dumb. Martinez is a slimeball. There's no sugarcoating that. Everyone knows it. He's a problem though if you just so happen to find yourself in a position lower than him on the power scale. Whether there's someone who directly works underneath him or a civilian. He's basically your stereotypical power-hungry asshole who joins some type of police force to fuck over folks and get away with it. He's only really as scary as his occupation, which is Frankly, still threatening if you're not Big Vance, who has the means to fight against that. He's also pretty much confined to the power his job gives him. Anyone with power beyond that, he's not gonna go against, as seen with the Mendez brothers. Martinez really just comes off as someone who got lucky to be in the position he's in and wants to live a semi-quiet, hedonistic life without issue, but is not actually equipped to deal with the backlashes of the life he lives. You know what I mean? Honestly, I don't care about Ryder as a villain. Like, I don't know if it's just me, but Ryder's villain arc is just so bleh. Like, compared to Big Smoke and the Crash Unit, it feels phoned in a last minute type of way. With Big Smoke, there's these hints that something is up, but with Ryder, it just happens. Ryder can be annoying depending on who you ask, yeah, but nothing about him comes off as if he hates being a part of the families. And then his death is like, wow, not even a death monologue cutscene? I guess. It's pretty much higher on this list because San Andreas is great, but they definitely could have done better with Ryder's betrayal. I'm not gonna lie, after Bulgarin's introduction in the main story of GTA 4, I tuned him out pretty hard to the point where my brain did not register that these were the same person. For me, it was like, oh yeah, you're the guy that was hunting Nico. Are you still doing that, or? I don't know, it feels weird. He kind of just gives up when it came to Nico and becomes one of the main villains for Luis and Tony, and it's just kind of meh again. I mean, he cuts off the head of the cook guy from the intro credits of GTA 4, but then it's like, oh no, you cut the head off of a character I don't give a crap about. Like, where is this energy for Nico? You came across the ocean for vengeance and said, well, he got away. On one hand, mood, I totally get it. On the other hand, ocean. It's not going upstate or the next town over. We are crossing oceans to get your money back.
Made like Al Capone. Scored a back sentence, stabbed it in the bones, well known.
Vinny is one of those villains that's just like, you kind of screwed yourself over, dude. Not gonna lie, the reveal that Vinny was alive the entire time and merely faked his death so he could run off with both halves of the money was pretty good. He has this vibe of the mentor who got jealous of his mentee, but it's also mixed with that mentor that wasn't really looking for the perfect student, but more of the perfect scapegoat. Like, this is a really weird comparison, but it's like in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, where the girls picked Jay and Silent Bob and that other guy merely to use them as patsies while they go out and be hot jewel thieves. It's basically like that, and it most likely would have worked. With some plot holes here and there, sure. But it would have worked if Vinny had just left. If Vinny just left and not try so hard to clean up any loose ends as Mike is on them, he would have gotten away with it. He was so close and he screwed himself up. Let Mike figure it out. You would have been long gone anyway. Who cares? Okay, he probably would have hunted you down to kill you for ditching him, but that's a problem for tomorrow, Vinny. Salvatore Leone is just nothing but a big ball of paranoia and bullshit. He's pretty much an older version of Sonny, allowed to sit too long out in the sun and just rot more, making him an eyesore for everyone around him. At least in my eyes, because Salvatore is fucking annoying from GTA 3 to San Andreas to Liberty City Stories. He's basically the gangster archetype that lives dangerously, so dangerously that he now has to walk around looking over his shoulder the older he gets. For me, Salvatore is the main villain of Liberty City Stories, especially considering the actual villains are about as relevant as Wei Chang. His biggest enemy is himself, and in the end, that fucks him over for the last time. Everyone essentially has that villain that's like, okay, are they really a threat to our protagonist? Which is like fair enough, because in the realm of most games, especially in open world games, your character is essentially a one-man army. The side characters are a completely different story. Take a character like Kate McCreary. Personally, I think that's what makes Rocco kind of threatening. Of course, this type of threat is for all side characters, but Ballad of Gay Tony kind of puts an emphasis on it with Luis and Tony's friendship and the threat Rocco presents to Tony. So I'll give him that. Other than that, Rocco screams nothing but a poser in every scene he's in. Like, he's got no sway in his organization, so he tries to come off like a big man to debtors when the only thing really protecting him is him being a made man. Like, it's so obvious he doesn't pose any type of threat to Louise because his act just doesn't work. If not for Tony, what other reasons would Louise have to not just end him other than obvious plot purposes? Billy Gray is the type of person that if you hang around him long enough, you'll be dragged down with him in whatever hole he finds himself in. And you can bet he'll give you up in exchange for getting out of that hole. Gray is the bad side of just living life by the moment. Not a single thought of, how could this affect the future, running through his head. Instead, he leaves all of that to Johnny to take care of so he can get mad at him for doing a better job at being a leader. Did I mention he's insecure? Because he is. He's the worst type of insecure too. He's that type of insecure that thinks talking down to you is the only way to feel better about himself. The type of person that if he had kids, he'd make them feel like shit because he's upset about his own life choices. He's the type of insecure that would tell you that you were brave for wearing what you're wearing. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, Billy sucks. To be perfectly honest, Jimmy's a more powerful version of Rocco Pelosi. He just radiates small dick energy because the big kids on the commission don't take him seriously. Like, even though Nico working with Pegorino means he's coming up in the criminal underworld, it's like those people who say they know celebrities because they walked their dog one time. Pegorino's powerful by association and nothing else. His status is wobbly as hell. All he wants is his precious senpais to notice him for once. Personally, if not for his late game relevance, I probably would have forgotten he existed. Kenny Lee is another character who had a good thing going, but messed up because his plan got too messy. It was simple at first: have his nephew deliver his brother's sword, give it to his boss so that he can secure his spot as the next leader of the Triads when Sin retires. What a fail-proof plan. So how did it go downhill? Well, he decided to attempt to straight up steal the sword that was being delivered to him and kill his nephew, which didn't work because his nephew survived. Shit, how to clean that up? Well, he then told his nephew to begin investigating on who could have possibly stolen the sword and shot him. Why he would instruct his nephew to search for leads like he ain't have the sword in his office is beyond me, but whatever. I would have told Huang to kick his feet up while I searched for the sword. Really, the downfall was when I made my nephew lead the investigation, which led me to having to do more cleanup than my initial plan called for. It was only a matter of time before my nephew figured out that it was me who did everything. I even had to admit that I was the one that killed his dad, so that also happened. Hell, I even convinced myself that Sin would never choose me as his successor, even though there's no real way I wasn't gonna be chosen, but it's whenever now. I'm dead. Fucking idiot. If the Crash Unit are the OG plastics, then the FIB trio are the Mean Girls 2 plastics. That's not a compliment for those playing at home. It's honestly not hard to compare the two since they're authority figures that live in San Andreas. I also don't think I need to tell everyone that Haynes is a grade A douchebag. Definitely signed up for the FIB for more opportunities to fuck over people without getting into trouble. He's a real threat considering his job, but he's not smart about it, because even Tenpenny didn't let CJ get too comfortable and too close to his stuff. Haynes essentially lost all his dirt on the Unholy Trio because he basically let them get too close to the data that contained their crimes. As much of a threat as he is though, he's really only intimidating when he's the only image of power in the picture. Once there's others he has to answer to, he folds and pretends to be a good boy very quickly. The guy's just a prick. Oh my god. He's a GTA brand Draco Malfoy. To be perfectly honest, the Mendez brothers are some pretty good final bosses. There's not a negative thing about them. They're honestly perfect villains. They're really just victims of circumstances when it comes to their place on my list. What else could I say? They have nice suits and I like their robot. The writing pertaining to Big Smoke's betrayal is just amazing. The little hints of foul play sprinkled in so that when you replay it, you have this realization that, holy shit, he was plotting this whole time. Like, realizing why Smoke was hiding out in the Johnson house in the beginning, Crash always being seen at his house, and especially the famous large order really being him stalling for time as well as him not shooting. It's so good. Smoke is basically the type that sold their soul for material wealth and found it wasn't as fulfilling as he thought it was going to be, given how depressed he was just before his boss fight. Just goes to show that even if money buys less stress, it doesn't buy happiness. I'm kidding, of course it does. That's why billionaires hoard it. What is the best way to describe Dimitri Raskloff? Gretchen Wieners. With more emphasis on him latching on to more powerful people as they come along, ditching the last person he attached himself to. He's a leech, a parasite. We first meet him and he's working with Mikhail Faustin, who is the closest proximity to power he can latch onto at this moment. Then in comes Nico. Dimitri doesn't really latch onto him in the same way he did Faustin, but more like a cab ride to the next best thing, which is Ray Bulgren, and then Jimmy Pecorino. But it's that constant person hopping that makes him dangerous to begin with. He may not gain more power in the same vein as maybe someone like the Ancelottis or the Leonis or the Forellis, but it feels more insidious if you get what I'm trying to say. He's not Regina George, but he is Gretchen Wieners. You might not be scared of Gretchen Wieners in the same way you're scared of Regina George, but there's no denying that Gretchen knowing things about you and the people around you is terrifying on its own. And that's Dimitri, at least in my opinion. Weston, much like his bunk buddy Haynes, is just the worst. At what point does his presence stop being a parody when these goofy bitches exist having quirky little space races when the rest of the world is struggling during the pandemic? He's really a perfect example of why we shouldn't let the rich have access to everything based solely on the fact that they have the money to pay for it. Weston believes himself to be a godsend and that everyone who works for him is given a privilege, and if you don't appreciate the privilege, then you can be disposed of. Honestly, getting blown up was too quick of a death for him. He should have drowned. Whether you agree or not, Catalina walked so Trevor Phillips could run. Compared to a lot of people on this list, Catalina does not secure her threat level through connections like with the police force or government, or even well-connected crime families. Because Catalina is a bad bitch who legit doesn't really need those things. If anything, her biggest downfall ends up being having to rely on others to help with her with dirty work. Hate that for her. Actually, she has two big downfalls. The second being that she doesn't know how to keep a good thing. CJ and Claude were the best help she was ever going to have, and she just left them behind. Especially with Claude, who she straight up just tried to kill. Can you imagine how unstoppable she would have been in the cartel with Claude by her side? She should have done better in that department. Other than that, she's a one-woman army, and I stan. Okay, so when I say Crash, I really just mean Tenpenny because the others are just his lackeys. I genuinely don't think there's ever going to be a GTA antagonist ranking list that doesn't have Tenpenny at the top, or at least top 3. What is there to say that hasn't been said? Tenpenny is a prime example of why you shouldn't have so much trust in the government, particularly the police, because they can and will fuck over the people in order to better themselves. Crash are those types of cops that get a TikTok to try and make relatable content in the middle of protests against police brutality. They're the types of cops that get on Twitter and encourage folks to snitch on the homeless for sleeping in subways. The types that post pics in dumbass heroic poses being like, #thin blue line. Seriously though, Tenpenny is such a looming presence throughout the entirety of the game, constantly having his shoe on CJ's neck, and never letting him forget that they have power over him one way or the other. Still the best villains in GTA history, and that's all there is to it. Alright, and that is all I have for you today. I kind of hope this goes without saying, but don't take this video seriously. Even if it's like, if you don't agree with it, you don't agree with it. That's just how it's gonna be. You don't have to get upset about it. I'm gonna say that and people will still get upset about it. But don't let one person on the internet ruin your time on YouTube. But yeah, that's all I got for today. I know this video honestly took a while because I was one half procrastinating, but the other half I was just like, take your meds, kids. Take your meds. Don't forget to take your meds. Take your meds. Trust me, it's important. I don't know what video I'm going to work on next, and this is probably going to be the last GTA video for a bit. I have a few ideas for other GTA videos, but I just need time. They just need time to cook. But in the meantime, I have been Hexley, and if you enjoyed what you've seen today, then don't forget to like and subscribe, or don't. I ain't your mom. And yeah, I'll see you later. Fancy words, my shit out of your mouth.